Good evening and welcome to the September 15th, 2022 regular meeting of the Marysville Board of Education. We previously called the meeting to order, had an executive session, and so at this point we are to the Pledge of Allegiance. If everybody would stand up and join me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. All right. I would accept a motion to approve tonight's agenda.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keck. Roll call.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carried. And now we have a couple of really exciting, wonderful recognition opportunities here. So the first recognition that we're going to have is we're going to a motion to approve the resolution for staff members in response to safety of students involving the incident on August 24th. Staff members of Eric Collier, Denise DeWalt, Regina Jones, Paul Lewis, Heidi Leporo, and Sean Williams. So I would accept a motion to approve these resolutions.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith.
Second.
Second by Mr. Keck. And I think we would love to have well, let's go ahead and just approve it and then talk a little bit about it, okay? So how about the roll call?
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. And now we'd like all of you to come up on the stage, please. So Eric, Denise, Regina, Paul, Heidi, and Sean. I am going to just read one of these resolutions so everybody has an idea of what these resolutions say, and they'll all get a copy of them. So this is whereas the Marysville Exempted Village School District recognizes that safety is paramount to the educational environment, and whereas a safe school environment is a collective responsibility for all community stakeholders, and whereas the efforts and commitment to safety protocols is a priority for all members of the Marysville school staff, and whereas our families and community members depend on the actions of our school staff to not only educate, but also to protect, defend, and care for their children, and whereas the individual efforts of every staff member contribute to the safe operations of the school district, now therefore be it resolved that the Marysville Exempted Village School District Board of Education recognizes each one of these individuals for their efforts to protect, defend, and care for our students and staff regarding an incident on August 24th, 2022 involving a student with a gun and knife on a bus. Their skillful thinking, calming demeanor, and intuitive nature ensure the safety of all our students and staff in the district. This heroic action saved possible injuries and lives for which we will forever be grateful. I mean, really, we cannot thank you all enough, for how you handled the situation. Clearly, there was great teamwork when you see the number of people up here, communication, quick responses, just to make sure our students and staff were safe. So we are incredibly grateful for what you all did. Really appreciate it. Okay, great. Okay, next on our agenda, we would like to recognize two individuals who we nominated for the Central Region, the OSBA, which is Ohio School Boards Association, Central Region Friend of Public Education, and Exemplary School Employee. So we are going to go down here, and we've got something to give to them. We've just framed a copy of our nomination letter, and while we're down there, Diana's going to go ahead and read those letters. So. Sorry, how about, I should say the names too. So Jane Ader and Donna Lottage. Jean is our Friend of Public Education, and Donna is our Exemplary School Employee.
Okay, we're going to start with Mrs. Ader, OSBA Central Region Friend of Public Education. The Marysville Exempted Village School Board respectfully nominates Mrs. Jane Ader as an OSBA Central Region Friend of Public Education. Jane has been the volunteer treasurer for the Citizens for Marysville Schools for the past 14 years. During that time, Jane has done a fantastic job overseeing the financials for numerous levy campaigns. Besides recording and depositing donations for the levies and making sure levy expenses are paid, Jane has been responsible for filing pre-election, post-election, and annual reports with our local Board of Elections. The recently retired director of our Board of Elections commented that Jane always brought her reports in on time and with a smile. Jane's attention to detail, unwavering integrity, and friendly smiles are just a few of the attributes for which we are so grateful. Our district has been fortunate to have such a qualified, trusted, and well-respected individual serving that role. A longtime Marysville resident, Monarch parent, and grandparent, Jane has been such a staunch supporter of public education, specifically the Marysville School District. She has put in countless hours behind the scenes in order to have a positive impact on our students, their families, and our community. We are honored to nominate Mrs. Jane Ader as our 2022 OSBA Central Region Friend of Public Education. Congratulations. Sure. Both of our recipients tonight will be honored next week at a dinner at OSBA, I think it's Wednesday evening, where they'll receive their official award, I guess, but tonight we wanted to make sure we recognize them at our meeting. Okay, so let's hope I don't cry. Mrs. Donna Lottage is our OSBA Central Region Exemplary School Employee. The Marysville Exempted Village Board of Education respectfully nominates Mrs. Donna Lottage as an OSBA Central Region Exemplary School Employee. Donna began her career with Marysville Exempted Village School District in October 1996. Over the past 26 years, Donna has served our district in a multitude of ways. Donna worked in the payroll department for a year, was a receptionist for several months before moving to an administrative assistant role, serving a variety of departments, curriculum, special education, and etc. She spent 10 years as the administrative assistant to the assistant superintendent, spent 13 years as the administrative assistant to the superintendent, and currently serves as a human resource coordinator while continuing to support the superintendent as her administrative assistant, which is a full-time job all on its own. That's not in the letter. Donna's knowledge and friendly helpful demeanor has made her a treasured and invaluable part of our team. Our board has also benefited greatly from Donna's exceptional skills. She is professional, efficient, accurate, dependable, patient, organized, and always has a warm and welcoming attitude towards everyone who comes into the board office. Whether she's updating our board doc agendas, helping put together our board member orientation handbooks, or making sure our board's web page is current, Donna always goes above and beyond when completing her tasks. We are proud to nominate Donna Lottage as our 2022 OSBA Central Region Exemplary School Employee.
Careful, Jonathan, you're not 30 anymore.
Well, I think we should just adjourn after that, right? No. Good stuff. No, thank you so much again. Let me get my screen back up here. I don't know what it's doing. Okay. My computer's going crazy here. Okay, I believe next up is presentation, public participation. Is there any public participation? No signups? Okay, then next on our agenda, we have a presentation from Mill Valley. Kristen Jones.
Okay. Well, I've accomplished my first goal, which was that I got up here without falling, so I'm really excited about that. Good evening. My name is Kristen Jones. I'm the principal at Mill Valley Elementary. This is my third year. If you can move to the next slide. The first thing I'm going to start with tonight is I got the honor to be part of the strategic direction process. And so once we did that and we did some work this summer looking at the new strategic direction, the first thing that I wanted to do before school started this year was to create a building leadership team. And then from that, I wanted us to create a vision for the building that was aligned to the new strategic direction. So before school even started, actually like the first week back, for staff. I met with the building leadership team, and we worked through a process in order to come up with a vision that was aligned to our new hashtag, which was All Kids Always. And so we were able to come up with this, which we really liked, and we feel like it really encompasses kind of what Mill Valley's all about. And so this is going to be kind of what all of our activities, you'll notice as I go through the presentation that our habits of mind are designed around this, but our vision is all kids will be challenged, prepared, and empowered in all ways. What I have here is I took the strategic direction and developed some goals for Mill Valley around the 4 buckets for the strategic direction. So as I go through the presentation, I'm going to talk about each of these. So one of the first goals was designed around future readiness, and this really ties back to that vision and that building leadership team that I already mentioned. But my goal for our building after the last 2 years that we've had was really for us to refocus as a building, kind of look at what we're all about, and then kind of, make a plan of what kind of experience we want students, staff, and families to have in our building. So we went ahead and obviously created our building vision. One of the things that the building leadership team really wanted to do was to organize a back to school assembly, because it had been so long since we really had been able to have like some traditional assemblies. So we did that, and it was a really great experience for the kids. The kids were really excited. We did an introduction of staff, very much like a pep rally style introduction of staff, just to reacquaint kids with all of the staff members in the building. Plus we had quite a few new staff members in the building. We went over building expectations. How do we behave in the hallway? How do we behave in the cafeteria? How do we use the restroom? And so we went over building expectations, and then we did a fun little back to school video that kind of just highlighted students coming into the building on the first day, and classrooms, and the excitement that kind of comes with the first few days of school. And that was a huge success, and I felt like it really kind of kicked off the tone for the school year. We also decided through that process of having this collaborative vision at Mill Valley was creating a way to onboard new students that come to the building. I have over 30 new students at Mill Valley this year, and that's not including our kindergartners. I'm just talking 1st through 4th grade. And so we developed like a new faces to Mill Valley wall, right when you walk into the building, that I took pictures of all of our new students with their names and their grade level, so that the other students that have been in the building kind of get acquainted with their new classmates. We have a new student group that the guidance counselor meets with to just get them acquainted to the building. And then we also have now developed a process for students who are starting now that the school year has already started. We've developed like a little packet that they get with a little magnet that has the school calendar on it and a Mill Valley t-shirt. And then we give the opportunity for the parents to walk the students to the class and kind of get acquainted to the building on that first day. I just felt like over the past couple of years, new students would start, and because of all of the protocols, families couldn't necessarily always come in and be a part of that experience. And then the next thing that we decided we really wanted to do was highlight some individual students. I'm going to talk a little bit more about that later in the presentation. But one thing that the building leadership decided that we were going to do is we are going to give a survey to staff 3 times a year, just to get their feedback on how do they feel about the things that the building leadership is doing. Do they have suggestions on things that they'd like us to spearhead? And so towards the end of each trimester, we'll be giving like a BLT survey to staff. My next future readiness goal was designed around kind of getting back to what we're really good at, that we have had to kind of get away from the last few years, which is just that personalized learning instruction and looking at individual learners and what kids need. So one of the things that I decided to do along with some staff members and my instructional coach was kind of develop a checklist of some non-negotiable personalized learning things that we just want to get back to doing really well. And so I have a picture of that up there. That's just a quick little checklist that's not tied to teachers' evaluations or staff evaluations in any way. It's really just a way for me, for my instructional coach, any district leaders that happen to come into the building can step in in, see these specific items, and then give some informal feedback to staff. It also opens up the door for us to have some conversations with staff, and then it gives us an idea too of what we want to do in terms of planning professional development. Is there some things that we need to revisit that we're just not seeing that we used to see before? And so it's just going to help kind of drive what we want to do as we continue with professional development through the school year. The third goal is designed around language arts. This goal is aligned to the new scope and sequence that the elementary buildings have adopted, and making sure we're getting back to some systematic and explicit instruction in terms of literacy. This summer, the staff and I took the whole summer pretty much. We did some professional development of just looking at the new scope and sequence. My PTO, who is wonderful, purchased decodable texts that align to the new scope and sequence for every teacher, so that every teacher has a set for the ability levels of students that are sitting in their classrooms for them to access. So it kind of cuts down on them having to take the time to copy and put books together. That's already done for them. And what we did is we gave teachers the opportunity to just have the gift of time, which is sometimes the thing that they want the most. So I met with grade levels over the summer. They met together. They looked at the new scope and sequence and basically had the opportunity of time to map out what their year was going to look like, look at the resources and the materials that they have, see how those align, and then decide, is there some things that they need that they don't have, that then we could make sure that they have access to those things. That was primarily kindergarten and first and second that did that, and so then we're working on those same sort of things then with third and fourth, just more on the vocabulary and comprehension end of things. I did include our iReady data, and the reason I included this is our first diagnostic of the school year, which means, students took this, and for reading, it's first through fourth grade. They took this the second full week of school. So the reason I'm putting this up here is because I am super confident and feel pretty good about where this data is going to head based on the things that we're doing and the things that teachers are planning in terms of instruction of where this data is going to go. So you can kind of see where we're at in terms of what, the percentage of students that are either above or at grade level. We obviously have students who are one grade level below, and then the students that are 2 or more grade levels below. But I do feel really confident in the work that we did this summer that we're going to move this. I also included our Lexia data as well. You'll see, if you look at the kindergarten, you'll see that their percentage is very low. The day that they did this, or the week that they did this, they had just learned how to open a Chromebook, log into a Chromebook. So that process in and of itself takes quite a while. So we're really gonna, we really have to use time in kindergarten and first grade to teach kids how to use Chromebooks, how do you take an assessment, how do you use a blended program, what does that look like? And so I included that again because I feel pretty confident as the year goes that that's gonna grow. My next goal for mathematics is, math is something that I feel pretty passionately about in terms of that I really want to do some different things with math. I want to get back to using assessments, using data, getting back to small group instruction, things that we kind of had to get away from the past couple of years. And then using the tools that are at our fingertips that I think sometimes teachers just need reminders about the access to what we do have that's so wonderful that we already have access to. So one thing that we're doing is through our teacher-based grade level teams that we have twice a month is we're working with teachers on how do we look at the information that we have, and then how do we group kids, and then how do we provide that small group instruction, whether it be for the students who are struggling in math or whether it be for students who need to be stretched. So small group instruction is a big part of what we're talking about. If you were here for my board presentation last year, I talked a lot about number talks, and that was something that we had a heavy focus on last year. It's just a really great strategy to get all kids engaged. And so we just don't want that to take a back seat now that we're looking at some other things. So we're continuing to talk about those. We've bought some resources and some number talks that are ready to go that teachers can just pull up on their interactive TVs. And so we just want to continue to make sure that that's a focus and that teachers know that that's a focus. We want to make sure that they're looking at a variety of data points. So iReady is one, but that's not the only one. We want them to be able to look at their classroom data. I think sometimes teachers forget the great information that they have right in front of them with the things that they're doing in their classroom. So we just want to make sure that we empower them and help them look at that information and how can I use that information to make instructional decisions in my classroom. And then the other thing I really wanted to do this year is, we have a lot of screening measures and ways to progress monitor students in reading, but we really don't have as much in math. And so I took it upon myself for Mill Valley, we are going to use a math screener this year that I found from Ames Web. We had used it some previous years in the district, but had gotten away from using it. And so I want to use it again, just to see if the teachers feel like the information is valuable. Are they getting what they want out of it? I think part of the reason that we got away from it is we needed to get really good at using screener information in the right way. And I think now that we're really good at doing that in reading, now's the time to do it in math. And so we introduced that at our grade level team meetings actually just this week, and showed teachers how to use the screener, which screeners they were going to give, showed them how to use that information. And so eventually what will happen is we'll collect that information. Part of the feedback we got from teachers is they really like the idea of doing this because you learn so much when you sit with a kid and do a screener. You can kind of see the process that they use, particularly in math if they're solving something. So I'll be really interested to see kind of what data we get from that, and then we can give that throughout the year to kind of progress monitor students. So that is something that Mill Valley is going to pilot using this year. So again, I included my iReady math data as well. For math, this is kindergarten through 4th grade that does iReady math. So again, it looks very similar to what I showed you for reading. Definitely more students that are one grade level below. But again, I think now that we're gonna have some additional information with the math screener, plus getting back to some of the personalized learning stuff and the small group instruction, I feel confident that this is going to move. And my last goal is wellness. This is really, the goal for this one is designed around making sure we're meeting all of the needs of our students. Social, emotional needs of every student, having activities, giving strategies, making sure that they know they belong at Mill Valley and that there are people there that support them. So for those of you who don't know what PACS is a trauma-informed behavior management system that we use school-wide. At Mill Valley, lots of buildings in the district use it. But Mill Valley just so happened to be in kind of an interesting place because they had started their full training and then COVID hit. And then they got some online training, but hadn't really had the opportunity to sit with one of the facilitators of PACS and kind of really get that down and dirty training. So I had a PACS trainer come in one of our PD days before school started and gave the staff just a quick, here are the big points about PACS that you need to know. I am requiring staff, they have to have characteristics of PACS present someplace in their classroom. That really just helps to have common vocabulary, common strategies, a common way to approach kids. So if they're in unified arts class, or if they're in the cafeteria, or if they're in their classroom, that all of the staff is using the same kind of terminology and vocabulary, and the expectations remain the same. So even when we have an assembly, we had a fundraising assembly yesterday, if we do, PACS leaders, every kid in the building knows what that means. I'd already mentioned about the back to school assembly, but that again was just getting back to those expectations of behaviors and making sure that students know what we expect of them. We reviewed the habits of mind at our back to school assembly too. We have the Mill Valley mindset that we say every morning after we say the Pledge of Allegiance. That's tied to our habits of mind. And so something kids, even after a whole year of saying it, still sometimes always can't remember the words. So we decided to design some hand motions that go with the Mill Valley mindset. And so we taught the kids at the back to school assembly the motions, and then now we do it on the announcements and the kids do the motions. And I do feel like already the kids have remembered it more with the motions than they did with just reciting it, that multisensory piece of things. The other thing that we're doing this year at Mill Valley is doing an office referral system that through Power School that allows me to just kind of document anytime a student has come to the office. The teacher can put in there why that student was sent to the office. I then in turn can kind of put some notes in there about what my conversation with the student was, if I had talked to the parent, and then there's also a place for me to put what consequence that student received as well. Staff also received I always give them a list of here's what you do when you see positive behavior. Here are the offenses of things that should end up in the office. Here are, consequences that could be given. And now there's a separate piece of that now with that office referral system. But that'll allow me to keep some documentation on how often are students coming from a certain classroom, or how often are students just coming to the office in general? Is there a particular student that we need to be concerned about? And so I think that's going to be a really great system to use this year. The other thing I've done is implement a PBIS team. This team is going to be kind of the go-to for any kind of social emotional needs in the building. So we're going to develop some strategies that we can give teachers when they're struggling with a student, almost like a response team too. So if we have a student in crisis, here is the team that you call. And so this will be the first year for that, but I have some really, I think this is going to be a good piece of just access for staff when, sometimes when you have a student and you're not sure what to do, that there will be a team of people that can come and support them and talk them through some possible strategies that would help that student. The other thing that I just want to mention that's not on here too, though, is that I will say that the dogs volunteers that have come into the building, the dads of great students, has been phenomenal. I wish I could make them part of the team too. Only because I have really seen, I've even had a couple of dads say to me, I left that day and there was a couple of kids that I couldn't stop thinking about. And so just the relationships that we're seeing these dads or these male figures that are coming into the building establishing with students, we're having them in kindergarten, help, with games. I had one dad that did, read a book aloud to a first grade class. They're helping at lunch and recess. Recess is such a great time because a lot of the kids don't know how to play organized games. And so a lot of the dads are out there teaching them the rules to basketball or teaching them the rules to soccer, and here's what you do. And so it's been a very cool experience to see. I've had about 7 dads so far, all different dads, and I've gotten so many emails of dads that are like, I don't want to go to work tomorrow. I'd rather come back to the building. So it's been a very cool experience. I feel like this is a good place to kind of bring that up. So the last thing that we're going to do too this year is that Mill Valley, like our theme and everything, is like a tree we grow minds. And so in the past, what we've done is we've given leaves out to students like when they exhibit one of the habits of mind. But the problem that we were having is we also do toodles with packs, which is like when you do something good, you get a toodles. And it was almost too much to manage. And we either felt like everybody was getting a leaf or nobody was getting a leaf. So we decided that what we were going to do in place of that, since we already do toodles in the classroom, was that we were going to highlight a student of the month. So every teacher and or staff member is allowed to pick one student. And it could be any student. It doesn't have to be a student that they have. It could be any student. They have to exhibit something that's related to our habits of mind. So innovate, collaborate, and inspire are our habits of mind. And so staff will fill out a form that says who the student is, why they're getting that particular student of the month. And so everybody will get the opportunity to nominate a student. So we're hoping like about 20 to 30 kids a month, hoping that everybody gets the opportunity to be highlighted at some point. And we also want to highlight kids for other reasons than just academics, which is why we wanted to do this. They're going to get to be on announcements. We have a whole wall that's going to be for Students of the Month. I've asked some local businesses who have generously donated like little gift cards. They get like a little bag with like a fidget and like a gift card and like a little certificate from Mill Valley. And so we're really excited to see how the kids respond to that. I think that it's going to be a little more exciting than me just calling over the names of who got leaves for that month and getting a leaf. So we're hoping that this just highlights some kids' personal strengths that you don't always necessarily get highlighted because a lot of times we focus on the academic piece of things. And then the other thing that the building leadership team and the PBIS team has discussed doing is giving students a survey 3 times a year, kind of just asking them about their experience at Mill Valley. Not necessarily related to academics, more just, do you feel welcome here? Do you have friends? Do you have somebody you can go to when you need help? Those types of questions. So we plan to develop something like that and give that at the end of each trimester as well. And I think that is it for me, unless you guys have questions.
Do you mind telling them what a toodle is?
Oh, it's like a little note that you get if you've done something well in the classroom, and it's related to PACS. And a spleen, if you don't know, is if you've done something that you shouldn't have, then you get a spleen. It took me a really long time to understand all the words too.
Yeah. The other one that popped in my mind was PBIS. Like, maybe explain what PBIS
okay,
is.
so that's
Some people don't know that.
the Positive Behavior Intervention Team.
Yeah.
And so, we're obviously looking at ways to, enforce positive behaviors, that team is, but then also support students who might be struggling either social-emotionally or just struggling behaviorally. But that's a state initiative.
Right.
And so I felt like calling it the PBIS team was probably most appropriate.
Yeah. Okay, well I love all this information, Kirsten, and Mrs. Jones.
okay.
But I look at how much you're focusing on engagement, with your staff surveys and then engagement with the students too. And I love that little checklist. You are amazing.
Yeah.
It gives everybody that opportunity, and really, it seems like it kind of takes away that. I'm going to say like that negative aspect of, we're really here to support you
Yes.
and help find resources for
That was
you.
really the idea behind it. They already get evaluated.
Yeah.
So I wanted
Yes.
it to be something completely separate from that, and something
Yes.
that, it doesn't feel threatening. I don't know if that's the right word, but
Right.
like more of like, we want to help you. I want to make sure that you have all the things that you need to make sure that your classroom is successful.
Yeah. I was curious with your office referral system, is that something that is just for you? Is it viewable by other staff members?
It's not. They go into Power School and input all the information,
Okay.
and they can see if they put it in, but they can't just see every kid,
Right.
if that makes sense.
Okay. Yeah. And I was thinking, well, yeah. I like that kind of team-like approach. That, you guys are all in this together.
Yes.
It's going to feel like a family, so. Anyways, yeah, so I'm sorry, do people have questions or comments? No? Oh.
What did you mean by the hand motions?
So there's hand motions like, I am an explorer, and then today is my day to grow is how it ends. So we do this at the end. I don't know if you really want me to do it all. It's kind of embarrassing. So
Yeah.
the kids look adorable doing it.
All right. That
So
was,
which each of the words we did a little hand motion, like,
yeah, that was going to be my question was,
Yeah.
would you demonstrate the motion? So,
yeah, that's pretty much what it is.
okay. Yeah. But there were some things that really stood out. The effort to try to get new kids involved and connected to other students in the building, but also reaching out and giving parents an opportunity to come and be part of the beginning of the school year, and I thought was wonderful. Teachers putting together their roadmap of where they're going to go, and then as they begin the year, getting data, finding out really where the kids are to begin this journey, and then testing and gathering data as we go along to find out if everybody's staying on the same road, headed in the same direction. And I appreciate really kind of returning to some of the past activities and data collection and looking to see if that still has value, because I know a lot of times you can get kind of wrapped up in trying all this new stuff, and there may be some things that you were doing in the past that have great value.
Really worked, yeah.
And I appreciate that, so thank you.
Thank you very much for your presentation. I just want to say thank you especially for the reset process, setting the tone and expectations for the whole school. I think that does a lot to set everyone off on the right foot moving into the school year. And I love the thing about the new student groups and making those kids feel welcome and giving them a little bit of a special attention since they're new. I was curious about how many, do you roughly know how many ELL kids you have?
I probably have about 15 that actually get ELL services.
Okay. So I just know that number of students is growing across the district, and I was wondering if it was kind of generally spread out, or?
I would say that we actually have probably more than I would say some of the other buildings, other than maybe Naven.
Okay.
I think Naven and myself.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for the presentation. I'm fortunate to have a student in your building, and I wanted to say the orientation process, all the staff members were very intentional in the way they engaged with not only the parents but our daughter, and it made me feel special.
Good.
And I had a couple kids try to take the attention from my daughter, but they all felt special as well.
Good.
I love the interaction with the students and staff about the surveys 3 times a year. I think it's very important to have that feedback loop. And so thank you for doing that. I love to hear the dogs program.
It's been amazing.
Well, I saw on Twitter a picture interaction, so I love to see that. One question I do have is about the iReady assessment. Let's just say if you could paint me a picture. I'm a 3rd grader. I'm in Tier 3. What's my educational experience look like?
So the first thing we always make sure we do is make sure that we go in and make sure that the lessons that are assigned to that particular student are what they need. So we just want to make sure that whatever lessons they're doing aren't too hard, aren't too easy. And usually iReady will do that, but sometimes it doesn't always. So I make sure the staff knows they need to go in and look at those individual students and make sure that the lessons that they're doing are appropriate for them. And then based on whatever it is they're working on in iReady, that's also what the teacher will then do in small group instruction with them. They'll support whatever those skills are. So they can go in, when you looked at that information, you'll see that there are the different domains. So if, a kid is struggling in numbers and operations, then they'll go in, look at what are the lessons, what are the things that are tripping them up, and then that instruction that they get individually in the small group, not the whole group, right, because that's going to be the standards that they're working on, but in the small group, it's going to be whatever they're struggling with based on the data that we got from iReady. That's the other reason I really like that we're going to do this screener now too, because I want to see if those two things complement each other. Like, are we getting the same kind of information in 2 different places? That's just going to help us enhance that intervention and that small group instruction even more.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm really glad that you're focusing a lot on math and bringing some of the, I love number talks.
Yeah.
I'm a numbers person anyway, so yeah, it makes me excited. But anyways, thank you very much
Yes,
for
you're
your
welcome.
presentation. Really appreciate
Thank you.
all of your goals, and we'll be excited to see what happens throughout the year. So
Thank you.
Thank you. We are now to our report section, and I think everyone saw we received an email from Mr. Cox, our High Point rep, and he said there really was not anything to report at this point. They have a meeting later this month, so no High Point report, so we'll move on to the superintendent's report.
All right, I just have a few things this evening. Wanted to give you an update on positions. We are down to 3 open positions. One is a custodian that doesn't really become available till the end of the month. bus driver, and a one-on-one nurse. We have a solution most likely through a company for the one-on-one nurse, but that's a difficult to find position for us. I also wanted to give you a update on enrollment. Last year, at the beginning of the school year, I should have this out, sorry, we were at 5,356 students. This year, we have recognized a 2.6% increase, and we're sitting at 5,495 students. But what I would tell you is, you remember we had projections done last year and shared those with you. We were over 6 kids than were projected, so that's a pretty good spot to be in. But I did think I would give you kind of a highlight of where those increases are being recognized. So Edgewood, we have an increase of 37 students, Mill Valley 3, Naven 43, Northwood 32, and Raymond 5. Creekview is up 24 students. Bunzeld is actually down 42 students. Early College is up 2. And remember, at this point, Early College probably isn't going to fluctuate too much because they're just about at capacity. MHS went up 65. Tri-Academy is up 10, and our students going to High Point has remained stable. So just as a little highlight, I did send you, we had a request from one of the board members, so I did send you the chart that highlights our enrollment right as it sits right now. And we're pretty close with having everyone accounted for, all the withdrawals complete and everything. So much better than we would have been in August. Quick construction update. Basically, I know there's some things later on the agenda, but we are still working on finalizing finishes. The priority is definitely East because that building has to be on time. We feel like our building can go, last. If we're not on time, it's not as big of a deal. But also, we want to make sure that building has everything that it needs. So if there are cuts to be made, it's going to happen at East as opposed to Edgewood. We're all concerned about increased pricing and all of those types of things. So we are working kind of on finished packages, colors, carpet, what are the cabinets going to look like, those types of things. I think Kristen did a great job kicking off our dogs program. It's really, really going well. We had over 155 dads indicated at the beginning of the year that they wanted to participate. We've already had 70 participate in days so far. The quotes and comments from the dads have been very powerful about their day and excited to come back. So if you're not familiar with, we kind of have a lead dog format, and that is the person that helps now to organize. The goal was not to make it another thing that buildings had to do or principals had to do. And so I think every building has a lead dog except for Creekview. However, Creekview's really had the most volunteers, which is kind of interesting. So it's all working out, but really it's really become a powerful piece in our day, and really it's great to have people come in and see what our teachers and principals do every single day. I think it's affirming to our work and good. So that's been fantastic.
Diane?
Yes.
Are most of the parents that are participating in this, are they coming in like one day every 2 weeks, or can you give me a sense of kind of where their participation is?
I cannot. I don't have a daily report. I don't see repeat names, if that makes sense. So I know there's a dog in a dad in different buildings on different days. We still have fairly low participation at the high school, and that's kind of a national trend. So we'd like to see if we could pick that up a little bit. We've already had some repeaters, and then some people have scheduled out, like they can only take so many personal days, and they've spread one out in the fall and one in the winter and one in the spring. So everyone's kind of, approached it a different way. Yep. But I'd say for a month into school, already having 70 people come in would be pretty positive.
Did anyone have any questions?
I just want to say I think it's amazing that 70 participants in the dogs program. I saw a post on social media, who let the dogs out? I'm just kidding. Practicing my dad jokes, sorry.
And I was curious, I know you had your first open house this
Yes.
past Monday. Did you
I
have
did.
anybody come and visit you?
I did not, but I had 3 parents call, and they weren't
Okay.
able to attend, so we had telephone conversations about, 2 of them were incredibly positive about individuals in the district, and one just some concerns with their child transitioning here from another district, so.
Okay, great. And you're doing that every Monday,
Every
right?
Monday, and we're going
Okay.
to do another reminder to parents. And,
Okay,
Yep.
great. Thanks for doing that. All right, let's see, treasurer report.
Okay, for my report, I'm going to discuss 2 of the board action items on there for tonight. First of all, we have the guaranteed maximum price for our renovation project at East and Edgewood. So we're calling this GMP 1. So what we're doing here, the construction team felt there was value and also cost savings as we are working through the design process and getting close. Instead of waiting until the very end of the design process and then doing one GMP, they felt that we could lock in prices now based on the things that we know. So this first GMP would lock in mostly mechanical, electrical, and plumbing. It would lock in some of the materials costs as well as locking in the labor costs, so that would insulate those things from inflationary costs. So hopefully that would save us some money. On the agenda, you have the full budget at this point, which is 4.975, so still under our proposed budget number. And then that first GMP is 2.595 million. So this first GMP really locks in a guaranteed maximum price for about half of the project. So if you look at it in terms of trying to stay under that budget that we initially proposed, the good news with this is that locks in about half of that to where there should be there really would be no way that number would go up. And then keep in mind it's a guaranteed maximum price, so there are contingencies built into there to where if things go better than expected, we actually could save a little bit of money and come in lower than that initial GMP. And then we will have, as we finish the design process, we should have the second and final GMP. We're looking at around December for that. We appreciate Mike Mancini and Peggy Murphy from Russilli being here, so they're here as well. If maybe there's any questions that we haven't been able to answer or that we can't answer right now. So before we go to the next one, I'll just open it up if there's any questions on this particular item.
I just had a couple questions on has the schedule altered? Just overall, what is the schedule for, the 2 projects have been moved a little bit more parallel. So kind of what is our start date?
Do you guys want to speak to, the reason we paralleled is the team really thought there was a cost savings, and with the labor shortage, it was a better approach to getting commitments on the labor side. So they'll start with East and kind of overlap into ours. But I'll let Peggy talk to that, or Mike. So.
Yeah, you pretty well nailed it. But what we started to find was we had sort of a cascade schedule before where we were kind of doing one and then the next one, and just found out get feedback from subs that it was really going to be much more economical to do them almost on top of each other. There is a lag, so it's still a cascading schedule, but it's almost simultaneously. So.
And from a timeline standpoint, this is starting construction roughly in middle end of November, and then
December.
November, end of November for one, and then a staggered start for the other school finishing up in June. So November, December to June is the construction timeline.
We will be moving offices. Ryan's working on that logistically, but end of October into November.
I know we did, and I'll talk about this a little bit in my report, but we had some people show up for our community coffee, and there were some comments about, why did we have to get out in July? And it looks like there's nothing that's happened. But can you kind of let us know what has happened over there at East?
Sure. We have, the abatement took place right after that. We've had the roof done. There's parking lot work taking place as we speak. So there are definitely things that are taking place.
Now, just a point to clarify, all of those things are actually not part of the project. Those are part of our PI fund, correct?
Correct. Those items are actually part of our regular maintenance program.
Okay. Other questions for Mike or Penny?
Peggy.
Sorry, Peggy. I know. I don't know. Sorry, Peggy. No? Okay.
I do.
Sure.
I'm sorry. So thank you for being here tonight. I do have a couple. We noticed that the budget has increased by over 200. Can you talk about the budget increases at this point in time?
Yeah, absolutely. So that's a fair question and one that we're accustomed to fielding recently. So the preliminary budget that was provided in June was based off schematic design, which is the initial phase of the project. And then the recent one is reflective of design development. And so the difference between those two is a lot more detail. At SD, you may not have your mechanical systems. You're looking at roughly 5 to 7 plan sheets, and it's kind of a layout of your building. The documents that we've put our GMP together are identifying your mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems, introducing a lot of detail. So to your question of what these increases or fluctuations are a result of, it's market conditions and it's further defined scope. And that's what's kind of driving and moving the needles in individual components of the building.
Can you explain the further defined scope? Have we increased the scope of the project, or have we decreased the scope of the project and prices have gone up?
So a perfect example would be plumbing, for example. So at schematic design, it's very early on and we were not aware whether or not a backflow preventer, a storage tank, or a booster pump would need to be required. And it's still unknown at this time, and there's going to be some testing that will be done to find out whether that's required. We've captured an allowance in this GMP to try to forecast those dollars so that at some point the design team says we don't have accurate enough flow and we need to have a booster pump. We can already pool for that, and those dollars have been allocated in this estimate. So just between those 3 items, you're looking at an increase of approximately $89,000 to the plumbing scope for Edgewood. And so looking through those items, those are some of the major scope adjustments. And then fire alarm is another example. I'm not trying to give you too much detail, but for example, at Edgewood, we are to provide a standalone fire alarm system. And that's easily quantifiable. We've had numbers on that. But at East, we're only renovating a portion of that building. And there are code stipulations where we may not be able to just put a few new strobes or a few new devices in that building and tie into the existing. It may be a full replacement of that fire alarm system. So for that reason, we're carrying allowance for a full system in East. And we're just trying to really capture dollars to protect the district's money and make it go as far as it can, knowing that we are in a volatile market. So,
thank you. I do have a few more questions, if I may. I know in an earlier email, there is the GMP 1 or was supposed to include steel structure, and this GMP is presented, steel structures are not, and metal studs are not included. Is there a reason why?
So in the initial GMP, when we really were talking about structural steel and some of those components, from really all we have are loose lintels, for new openings that we're cutting into masonry. We're not talking about structural deck, structural steel that are really long lead concerning items that have been suspect to, the inflation over and over the past few years. We do not have the concerns with, our drywall package, and as that scope gets defined, we've tried to capture some of that escalation, and the availability of those materials is not a concern for the drywall package.
Okay. I do have, so in June, this board voted to approve the project moving forward, and specifically the reason for our vote and the need for that meeting was before lead times. Have we purchased items? What has happened since then as far as trying to get ahead of lead times for materials?
That's a great question. That's honestly what we're kind of doing now and what we're trying to approve. So since the board made that decision, what's been happening behind the scenes is the entire design team and Russilli, we've had weekly meetings where we talk about the design, the intent, how things are going to move forward as these documents develop. And that effort has allowed us and OHM, the architect, to put that detail into the design, so that way when we receive those documents, we could put that onto the street to subcontractors. And so, when you talk about some of the fluctuations, there are some components of the building where we received better pricing because we got it on the street early, and that's, what we've been doing behind the scenes. And so nothing has been purchased at this point. Our goal is, if we're successful in reaching a resolution and GMP1 gets approved, Peggy and I go back to the office, tomorrow or whenever we get a green light, we award subcontracts to our competitive complete low bidders, and then we start that submittal process so that way we can order the equipment, your rooftop units, your split systems, and any electrical components. So that has been the effort to get to this point so we can kind of get ahead of it.
Just so I make sure I understand, so pretty much after that vote, you went to subcontractors to secure prices for the materials and this kind of their scope of the subcontract, and those prices are locked in for now until we make a decision tonight.
When we receive the documents that the GMP is based on, we send out an invitation to bid to multiple subcontractors. And so this is reflective of competitive bids that we received, and we received multiple bids from multiple contractors for the trades on the GMP. And then Peggy and I had meetings with each one of them and did a thorough scope review and made sure that, we're looking at these documents. Do we have everything included? Again, to just protect these dollars so that way if we get approval, we can cut them loose and then start the process of purchasing equipment.
One of my concerns is if we do, the original schedule was for this meeting in this month to do the guaranteed maximum price. So in April, that was the current timeline. Splitting the guaranteed maximum price, my concern is it commits, if we approve tonight, it commits us, we start the project, and not knowing what the guaranteed maximum price for number 2 will be. I think the point and the reason why we went down this path from January and April and June was because we, as a board, believed that we would, at this meeting, have a guaranteed maximum price and secure that and lock it in. Can you share why this is the best strategy to break this guaranteed maximum price up into 2 parts?
Absolutely. So understand that the intent, whether we break this up into 1 or 2 GMPs, the intent is always to complete this project, as is within the budget. Breaking out the MEP components is locking in the pricing now, because I can promise you that if we had to wait another few months, you're not going to be able to get rooftop units in time, the price is going to go up, and it's not going to be what we're looking at today. And so when you're talking about GMP1 and potential concerns of GMP2, I want to make sure that we understand in our DD estimate, we are carrying a design contingency on the balance of the project. So you have 2.5 roughly in GMP1. There's 6% design contingency carried on the balance of that cost to kind of protect the elements that have not yet been designed from an architectural standpoint. But then in addition to that, we also are carrying 3% cost escalation, and that's over the entire cost of work. So that 3% is even covered on the MEP equipment that, or the MEP GMP that we would be trying to get approved. So there's built-in buffers to try to forecast and account for the concerns of what happens in 6 months, what happens in 2 months. So
I guess, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead, Ness.
If the logic stands that if we lock in these prices, it's kind of inflation proof, right? We lock in these prices. Should the logic apply to the remainder of the rest of the items that are left out of GPM1?
I would agree, but from the process of the design for the other components are not there yet. And that's not at any fault to, architect or the design team, but the push is for the MEP items because that's where every project's getting hit the hardest. And I think we've built in, some buffers to account for that in the balance of the project moving forward. So, we're reducing risk, almost 52% because we're locking in the major components. And I think the balance of that is it's not designed fully enough to give a hard number. And as the design develops and we get contract documents, it goes out on the street and we go through the same process. So I think the risk is less on the balance of the project.
This is my last question. So I'm going to go target a specific line item as selective demolition cost. In November, the document that was presented in November for East, this selective demolition prep cost was quoted at $98K for East and $86 for Edgewood. In June, those numbers moved up to 151, or 152 rounding up, and 161 respectively. In 9/12, those numbers are now 157 and 114. Can you explain the fluctuation in this line item? Because in my mind, and I'm not in your trade, but demolition and prep should be somewhat inflationary proof, and that's how I think about it. Can you explain how these costs are moving about?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you recall when I mentioned schematic design documents and when you're doing programmatic budget, a lot of times, we're kind of going off of a design narrative and or a couple plan sheets that just say, here's the square footage of the building and here's the layout. That detail and those coded notes aren't provided to us that say, you're going to cut into this masonry wall and we're going to put in 5 new windows. And so as that scope got defined, when I look at June 3rd relative to 9/12, because really that's where, at schematic design, that's where our initial stab of looking at the design narrative and talking with OHM. And then when you look at 9/12, we put that on the street. The scope was clearly identified, and it actually allowed us to get competitive bids that came in under budget. Okay. So that's where that fluctuation is. And I know it's challenging because when you do a programmatic budget, you're going off of cost history, previous projects, and there's really not a definable scope yet other than we're going to gut this building. So that is why you're seeing that fluctuation.
Thank you very much for answering all my questions. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you could, I know that Russilli is involved in a lot of different construction projects. Is this project coming differently than many of the others, or are there some characteristics about this project that are similar?
So that's a fair question. And we have a lot of projects currently out to bid that range from new builds to partial new builds and renovations. And so when we talk about the balance of this project where, this would be GMP2, a lot of what we do on our end is we're gauging the market, we're talking to subcontractors, and we're also comparing this to like projects that we have on the books. And that's what helps us drive this price. And what I will say is, at schematic design, when, we tried to capture some of these inflationary costs, I think it positioned the project fairly well given the uncertainties that we have. So this is what we're seeing from a cost standpoint. I think it aligns. We have several subcontractors that it would potentially fit their backlog. They're excited about it, and I think their interest in the project has kind of produced some competitive bids and positioned us to do an early GMP and get started on the project.
Can I just add to that too? I think when we were here in June and we talked, that was what we were talking about. And I guess to answer your question in a little different way, is this tracking like other projects? Doing multiple GMPs has become very normal for us. And that's because of trying to get in early and lock down some of the biggest prices, the most volatile prices, the things that take the longest to procure. And so this is a practice we're involved in on just about every project now.
Yeah, and just for me to clarify for myself, essentially we started with a concept and some estimates of what that concept might cost. And as we have moved through the spring and we've come now through the summer, we have continued to refine the plan. We've continued to be able to identify more specifically the work that's involved and the materials that are involved. And our decision earlier to move forward allowed you to take where you were at that time and go to your contractors, subcontractors, and ask them, if we ask you to do this work with this degree of detail, what would you charge? And you've been able to do that with these specific areas, but there are still some other areas that you're continuing to work on. Do I understand that?
Absolutely. You probably said it better than I did. But, another maybe important point to make is on the balance of the project, which would be GMP2, a lot of what we have in here is reflected of conversations that we are having with subs. It's Peggy and I calling a glass and glazing company and saying, are you seeing any material increases? Are there any lead time issues? Making sure that we're getting ahead of it and making sure that, what I'm putting on paper here and presenting is an accurate indication of either what's coming and what the market currently is.
Yeah. And it also seems, again, this is for my clarification, that you are trying to anticipate where in some circumstances you would have a change order or a cost overrun and have tried to build dollars into GMP1 to cover any of those contingencies. Is that fair?
That's fair as well. And I think an example of that would be when you're looking at the mechanical package, there are fire dampers, you have fire ratings in your corridors and in your walls. When Peggy and I scope these subcontractors, Peggy's done this for years and she understands what that scope needs to be included in that contractor, and we're scoping and saying, I know you may not have, the fire damper may not be identified. Are you carrying fire dampers? Because they're going to be required in the building. And that answer is yes. So we try to anticipate and fill those gaps so that way, we don't get down the road and say, we didn't know that was going to be in the building. I mean, we have to do our due diligence, scope our subs, and try to capture all of those scope items. And I think, kind of one point I will make, because I know I understand the concerns from a budget and having the questions we received today. When you look at, the DD estimate and you're asking about what would happen, right now in a snapshot in time, if the design was far enough along and we were bidding the whole project as a GMP, we would not be carrying design contingency and we would not be carrying escalation because we're buying the whole project out. And so if you were to look at this snapshot in time, we would actually be under budget from our SD estimate if you were to kind of compare apples to apples.
Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Yeah, I just want to, I think I'm hearing that we're still under budget.
We are.
The 5 million, yes.
Good.
And I just want to make a comment. I appreciate your, I really feel like you've got our best interest at heart, and it is tough to, have something said 3-6 months ago and then come back and say, well, we're changing things up, but the reality is, it appears to me that these changes are for really good reasons, and I think you guys are the experts. You're seeing what's going on out there. Renovation projects are always challenging. You really don't know what you're going to run into, and then you've got all these other things on top of it. So, I appreciate you being here to answer all those questions, and I really appreciate your focus on this project. So, as far as the long-term timeline, do you still feel fairly confident in when things can be finished up?
Yeah, from a schedule standpoint, yes, we do. Okay. And I'm certainly not trying to sway anything, but this is a huge piece of the puzzle. If we can get started and we can get contractors locked in and start moving forward, that just allows us to get our ducks in a row and prepare accordingly.
Okay. Any other questions? Thank you, Mike and Peggy, for being here again.
Thanks, Mike and Peggy. Really appreciate it.
No problem.
Second item I'm going to talk about is the bond conversion resolution that's on the agenda tonight. It's kind of funny, when I sent the email earlier about that, I said, related to the bond refunding that we did last year, because it seems so long ago. That was actually in March, so it seemed like forever ago. So when we did that refunding back in March, we really had two options at that time. We could go in early and do a refunding that would be taxable. Taxable meaning the people who buy the bonds, the companies that buy the bonds, the interest on those bonds would be taxable to them. It really has nothing to do with the school having to pay taxes or not. The other option is waiting until December, which would be the first option the school would have to then offer a tax-exempt refunding. Based on the market and making the assumption that rates were going to increase, we did the taxable refunding in March and built into that refunding basically a call option, meaning that in December we would be able to change those taxable bonds over to tax-exempt bonds that would have a lower rate. I think it was a decrease of about 0.6%. So it's really not, we're not really talking about new savings. So, the total savings of the project was around $600,000 for this particular set of bonds. But what we're talking about is by doing this refunding early in March and now doing this conversion, we saved around $130,000 as opposed to waiting until December and doing just a tax-exempt refunding. So there's really no question of should we or shouldn't we. It's already built into the refunding. The real question was, did we make the right decision when we did it in March? And this would show that yes, we did. Any questions on the refund, or the conversion, I should say?
Other than we should all give ourselves a pat on the back, right?
Right.
Okay, thank you, Todd, for that recommendation. There are no other questions? Did you have? Nope, okay. Next up, my report. we did have we had a couple of opportunities for people to come and meet with us this month. We had a community, conversation with board members in Broadway. That was a first, and Mr. Smith and Mr. Keck were up there at the Old Stone House. And they had, Mr. Smith sent a report. I don't know, Mr. Keck, did you have any additions or revisions? Okay, so they had several people come and talk about a variety of things. So we always appreciate that. And if there are any issues or concerns, I know those are always shared with Diane or Todd so that we can do appropriate follow-up. And then this past Sunday, we had our community coffee at the library, had a couple of people come. Both of them have been to a coffee before. And really, I thought they both are just very supportive of the district and had some concerns about if we're going to have a levy coming up soon, need to be making sure we're getting information out there for people, and then also talked a lot about the mailer that goes out to everybody and shared some thoughts from their perspective. It's maybe people who don't know as much as we know, or just talking to some of their friends. And so I've shared that information with Diane, and maybe we can make a few adjustments and make our information and communications even more impactful.
Yeah, I thought it was really interesting to hear for the first time how people looking at the mailer reacted to it and how they saw the wording and the layout and consistencies and inconsistencies and so forth. So I thought it was very informative.
I agree. Let's see, then we did have our special meeting on August 29th, where we reviewed and discussed our work plan for the 2022-2023 school year, and a draft of that is on the agenda later for our consideration. Nan and I attended the OSBA Central Region Legislative Open House last month. They shared some updates, really because since the legislation was not in session, thank you. I couldn't get that word. Just kind of highlighted some pending and expected legislative issues that are going to be impacting public schools. Just a reminder, OSBA works really closely with legislators to try and help them understand some of the complexities that result from some of the bills that they introduce. And they also, as always, encouraged us to develop relationships with our own representative and senator. And as we all know, Mr. Smith does an amazing job meeting with them. So we really appreciate that. And we also welcome any legislator to come and visit our district, because it's just an opportunity that to help them see what's happening in our district and some of the opportunities we have for our students. Nan, did you want to add anything about that legislative open house?
No, I'm just constantly amazed by the amount of legislation being brought forth by the state legislator each year regarding schools. And so many pieces of legislation are directed at a specific problem, and their answer is a blanket law across all districts without really doing very much investigation as to the impact. So
right.
I'm just constantly surprised, to be honest with you.
It was interesting because the lady from Ohio School Boards Association who meets with these legislators was specifically talking about a bill that was introduced. And she said, yeah, when we talked to him and explained what, things that might result from this bill that really didn't make a lot of sense. He's like, oh, I didn't know that. So he said that several times,
right.
And so just that reality that, maybe if they could try and visit school buildings and talk to professionals and, the superintendents, teachers, things like that, and not just that one side or one event that happens
Correct.
that spurs them to want to introduce something.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Let's see, there was a chamber board meeting this morning, and excited to say that we do have a Marysville High School student who's interning at the Convention and Visitors Bureau. And just a reminder, too, that the chamber has, I think, 4 or 5 different business associations, and plus they have a safety council, and all of them offer scholarships for the high schools in their areas, so really appreciate that. And Mr. DeStanko, who's the head of the safety council, he specifically called out how impressive the scholarship applications were, and that they have, obviously for Safety Council, they asked the students to write about a safety issue, and he said, they identified safety issues and shared potential solutions that were, really impressive, and said that one awardee from Marysville wrote about the dangers of sleep deprivation. And he was impressed. He goes, I don't think I used the word deprivation when I was in high school. but anyways, it's just, we're fortunate to have those partnerships with our chamber and the business associations. Then just kind of the reminders, our Central Region Fall Conference is this next Wednesday, where we'll officially recognize Donna and Jane. And then I did also, I think you have all received now, we're going to do a little book study as a board. So I don't think I have it here, but I got a recommendation from OSBA on a book that they thought would be really helpful. So actually our whole governance team has this. It's called How Not to Be a Terrible School Board Member. So hopefully we will follow up with some type of a retreat / work session sometime in October, because our goal is always continuous improvement, whether we are employees in the classrooms, at the admin building, or as a school board. We need to be working together and finding ways that we can do a better job. And that's it for my report. So, student achievement report.
Okay, so I forwarded the Student Achievement newsletter to everyone. There's several articles in there that you might find interesting. The one that I really kind of found interesting was on students head to college with academically malnourished. And of course, that's because of the COVID situation. And that varies, of course, by district. But the support that the gap that we see within our district is in every district. And the good news is that we are very well equipped with MTSS support systems already in place to be able to help narrow that gap with our students. So. And then I think everything else Sue already mentioned, so I'll just skip those.
Okay, legislative report, Mr. Smith.
Thank you. I sent my report out to you earlier. The legislature is, as Sue mentioned, not in session at this point, won't be until after the election. We just received the OSBA Journal in the mail, and the first article is on COSPA. I think that might be how it's pronounced, the acronym for the Consortium of State School Board Associations, which has replaced the National School Board Association as the State School Board Association's federal advocate, and gave you a little bit of information about that and some upcoming events that are being scheduled. Met with Senator Reineke and Representative Richardson on September the 2nd, and had really four things. I gave them our strategic design, and I will tell you they were absolutely, both of them, significantly impressed in the amount of detail and work that went into that. I focused on how collaborative our district was in developing that, working with the community and staff to come up with that. So they were very, very pleased. I also, at that point, raised Senate Bill 23. Senator Gavarone introduced that bill. I have more information on it, but essentially it would create a civil penalty rather than a criminal penalty if somebody passes school bus. And then talked about the two big things. One was vouchers and how vouchers are not a positive for public schools in Ohio, drains away potential money that could come to our school district. And then the other goes to what Sue and Nan were kind of talking about a little bit, a matter of trust in local school boards to deal with issues. And I pointed out, and I listed 3 sections of the Ohio Revised Code for you. Management and control of schools is vested in school boards. The authority of the school boards to select instructional materials and to establish the curriculum for the school district. And then the last one is that in state law, any parent that has a question about the instructional materials or the curriculum can get information and has to be able to receive that. And I think that both of them were somewhat surprised that things that are tied to a lot of current legislation are already in law. And so my request to both of them was to trust local school boards to address concerns. We have policies in place, and we have gone through those policies and our procedures whenever a question has been raised concerning anything that's going on in our district. And certainly our district is no different. We've in the past had people that questioned this or that in terms of a book or a lesson or a teacher's activity or whatever. And they've all been taken care of because, as Sue mentioned, they were very specific situations, and there was something that you could address. A lot of the criticisms that you see in general conversation on social media are these broad general comments about, I'm concerned about this, and there's nothing specific because either it doesn't exist in our school district or it doesn't have enough specificity that any school official can take any action. So good conversations with both of them. I also added to the end of the report a couple of things concerning statewide computer science plan has been finalized by committee challenged with that, and also the state school board of education is beginning the process of developing the budget for at least the governor's first proposal sometime probably in February. So thank you.
Okay. Thank you. Any questions for Mr. Smith? Yep.
Mr. Smith, one thing that stuck out to me in the report is on the voucher situation. It was stated that a reason there is support for vouchers is because harassment and bullying policy. In your conversation, this is something we can control. This is a controllable variable that every district can, if students are looking for a different option, we can address these issues now. Was there anything from that conversation that maybe the board should consider when we look at our policy?
Well, as I alluded to, when there's a concern, we already have in place a detailed policy that deals with bullying or sexual harassment or any inappropriate activity within the school district. And that matches the state law. And in my conversations with both the senator and the representative, I think sometimes parents want to escape what they perceive as a public school issue. But all of the research, all of the articles that I've found on the subject all say that bullying is ubiquitous. You go anywhere, anytime, any place, and people are being bullied. People are bullied in the workplace. People are bullied in private schools. They are bullied on the internet. It's a characteristic of human behavior, seems to be, that people want to take advantage of somebody if they have that opportunity. And so it's not a matter, at least from my perspective, it's not a matter of being able to completely prevent it. I mean, we have a multitude of different programs trying to develop character in our students so that they're sensitive to the feelings of others and that they don't bully. And so we are being very, from my standpoint, my vision, very proactive in trying to create the safest and most appropriate learning environment within our buildings. Having said that, we're still going to have some instances where students don't act in an appropriate way. And we already have policies and things in plan. And I think, going back to my teaching days, that parents oftentimes will call up and say, you know, my son or daughter had this experience at school today, in talking with the principal or superintendent, and say, I want you to address this. And so our policy says they will address it, and they do. But state law says they can't discuss what they do with the parent that called, because any discipline of a student is subject to that student's privacy. And so sometimes I think students or parents and students walk away thinking, well, they didn't do anything. When the reality was that something was done, you just don't know. And I tried to explain that to both the representative and the senator, that, you know, I don't find it persuasive that the state ought to be taking public tax dollars and funding vouchers for people to try and escape bullying. You know, let's address the bullying. We've got policies, we've got things in place. Marysville's on the forefront in terms of trying to create a stronger environment, teaching kids how to deal with their emotions, how to handle a situation where they may feel that they're being bullied and do that in an appropriate way. And what I see in, you know, the elementary grades particularly, where their experience has been subject to this kind of approach for maybe a bit longer period of time, and I know COVID impacts this as much as anything else, but I think we're doing and working on things in the right way, trying to prevent the bullying from occurring, but also making sure that parents know that if something happens at school, it's going to be addressed. It's not going to be tolerated. And our administrators and our principals have the full backing of the school board to do whatever is necessary to try to make sure that we have the best, most positive learning environment possible for our students.
Good. Okay. Thank you very much. Safety and Drug Committee report.
No report tonight.
Okay.
We didn't have a meeting, so.
Okay,
Thank you.
all right. Then we are now to our business section, and I would accept a motion to approve draft minutes from both our August 18th regular meeting and our August 29th special meeting.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck.
Second.
Second by Ms. Savage. Any questions, comments, revisions? All right, then a roll call, please.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. And now I would accept, we have 3 different Board of Education items. First one, accept a motion to approve our goals and work plan for the 2022-2023 school year.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Keck. Discussion, comments?
I really like what we did. I think we made some really good changes to our goals and our plans. I think it is very descriptive of how we as a board intend to support the actions of our administration, our teachers, with the goal of making sure that the students are always put first.
Okay. Savage? You're already on there.
I'm sorry. I appreciate all the effort that everyone put into sharing their ideas together to create a work plan for the board. The work plan is actually a good tool for us to look back on a, every other month phase. It helps keep us kind of on target on things that we're interested in following up on and interested in pursuing ourselves and enhancing our own boardsmanship.
I'd just like to say thanks to Sue for all the work she put into putting this thing together, because it's big.
You're welcome. We had some really good conversations, I think, at our special meeting, and it was, more than just this work plan, but I think it's that ongoing professional development and, kind of gelling as a board and understanding what our roles are and what they aren't, and just supporting each other and listening to different ideas. So it's all good.
Yes, I was going to actually speak to that just for the members of the public. We did have a work session, and we, part of this work plan, this board work plan, is tied directly into our strategic plan. And so part of the conversation we had it was we've approved and adopted the strategic plan. We're going to support it. We're going to hear reports about it. Does it have to be tied in directly, or could we focus on 3 or 2 items to work through this year? We had a lot of great conversations, and I thank everyone for entertaining my thoughts, but I really appreciate everyone having the opportunity to add value to this board work plan. It was definitely a collaborative effort from every board member here. I love the just some things I like is making sure our community partnerships are recognized. I think that's something that we do every board meeting. We're recognizing someone. I really like that, but that commitment to make sure every volunteer, every business who donates, we make sure that we as a board reach out and be very intentional with that. And I think that will go long, just pay dividends down the road. With student achievement or student learning, I think the board will celebrate students and staff who exhibit a love for learning and are positive community-minded leaders. I think that one sticks out good to me, because that's what we want. We want kids to love learning. We want our staff to love the environment that they teach in. And so those are my thoughts, and I thank you for allowing everyone to participate in this.
Okay, so if this is approved, then we'll add this to our website. So if anybody is curious and wants to look over our work plan, it will be available. So, roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. Thank you all. Next on the agenda, I would accept a motion to approve the GMP resolution, GMP 1 resolution.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Questions, comments?
I'm excited to take another step. I know that we need additional space at Edgewood, and I think hopefully as this project goes forward and we see more of the design plans, that our administrators and the public will have a better place in order to meet and discuss and move our district forward.
Other comments or questions? Okay.
This has been a very interesting issue for me. I don't like to be the guy on the island not supporting something. It is uncomfortable. I want everyone to know that that's my concerns are that we're launching this project in the middle of record inflation, while we are seeing signs that inflation will cool. You can't build homes with mortgage rates going so high, the interest rates going so high. So I think there's going to be some cooling. The Fed is actively working to make unemployment higher. And so ultimately, in January, we were told there would be one guaranteed maximum price in September. And while I commend all the answers are laid out, I question why can't we get everything? I understand it's tied to the design development, and that's not complete. But if we're locking in prices to have them be inflation-proof and lock these labor rates in, I don't understand why we can't do it all at once in one guaranteed maximum price. That's my question. I know we've already had some answers about that. We are very, very close to $5 million mark. We're very close. And while we don't recognize the roof project and the paving project, somehow those are separate from this whole renovation project, despite the fact that a year ago today we were talking about selling East. We've surpassed $5 million in either the budget or dollars spent. I think we're going to come back and we're going to have other renovation projects to East because we're not doing the complete building. We might get Edgewood completely renovated without further projects, but East will require more money. The project enrollment, projections, the enrollment projection studies, I think we need to dig deeper on that. And we really have to have a district growth plan because we're going with the solution that if we build 5 classrooms, we won't need another elementary building for another 10 years. I don't know if it's a debate. That's what has been said. We can get to 2029 with this plan. Personally, I don't think we should go out and shop and build public projects when the prices are the highest and the labor market's the tightest. And so that's why I will be voting no, because of those issues. And I have to stay consistent to where I've been this whole process. So thank you.
Okay, thank you for sharing that. I don't think it was whatever. It's not quite 10 years, but I understand what you're saying. So any other questions or comments about this?
Yeah, I appreciate and I understand, Jermaine, your position on this. I know that we have kids in Edgewood that are crowded, and I know that in the short term, the next 2 or 3 years, we're going to need additional space for Edgewood. There is no guarantee as to how growth is going to go, and there is no guarantee as to what's going to happen in terms of interest rates, inflation, and prices, and so forth. But I don't think we can wait. I think we are at a point where we're making the best decision that we can today for the short term with an idea as to what the long term could hold. And I think we recognize there's going to be the need for additional buildings and renovation of additional buildings and so forth. And I also know that we expect a lot of our students, and we worked and have worked very hard to try to make sure that they have classrooms that are appropriate, clean, in good condition. Little sidetrack, I was appalled at some of the pictures of the Columbus school buildings, some of the issues that they had. And I know we've tried to address and we've maintained our buildings in good shape. We're trying to retain the great staff that we have and the great administrators that we have, and I think we have to put them in a work location that is fitting for what we ask them to do in terms of directing the activities on a daily basis of our school district. And so I think the renovation of East is going to be necessary. In my lifetime, there have been inflation rates that make this current situation pale in comparison. Mortgage rates are high. The first house I ever bought, I paid almost 10% interest on the mortgage for the house. You know, things aren't always going to be good. But I don't think as a district we can sit and wait and not try to address the immediate needs that we have, at least for the next few years, with hope that it's going to get us to the next stage. Before this district has ever gone through a building program, classrooms were big in terms of the numbers of students. I had a class one time that had 43 students in it. I worked in a trailer outside what's now the Early College High School for a number of years before the current high school building was built. We're going to feel some pain. We're going to have some crowding. We're going to run into some issues in the future. I don't think there's any way to avoid it. But I think we have an opportunity as a board now to take a step forward, to do the right thing for our students, to do the right thing for our administrators and our staff. And I believe that in the end, our community will appreciate the action that we're taking. And that doesn't diminish your concerns at all. I know it's been expressed many times, the budget and how close we're getting to the top and so forth. But the current position where we are, the people that are knowledgeable, the experts in this area, which I am not, are saying this is the appropriate thing to do, that this will save money by locking in now a certain number of activities and construction projects. And there's still some uncertainty. But when we get the second part of this project, you know, I'm expecting it to be, the total project still be under the $5 million. And if we look at a proposal that's above that, we can certainly ask, well, where can we cut? Where can we make reductions? The focus, I think, is going to be on East. I think I've heard that. And then, or excuse me, on Edgewood first to take care of the kids, and then East would be second. So, you know, we can look at ways to save money if that becomes necessary. But I got some reassurance from our contractors that they are looking for and trying to anticipate where they might have overages, where they might run into cost overruns, and they are building that in to the proposal that they're giving us, trying to include as many of the cost unknowns as they possibly can. I want you, as every board member, to vote your conscience, to vote what you think is right. I'll be voting in support of this.
Thank you, Mr. Smith. Any other comments or questions? Yes.
I'm very concerned with the cost also, but I think it's a lesser of two evils at this point in time, and I think you can't run the district on you know, where the interest rates are and the labor rates and the crisis we find ourselves into right now in the country. It'll pass and things will be better. But right now, I think it's the cheapest way we can add some classroom space Edgewood. So I'll be voting for it.
And I just also appreciate utilizing the assets that we have. You know, I think that was a great move, and just been a fan of it since the beginning. So, and having been through a couple of personal, family-related renovation projects over the last year, I'll say this is not surprising at all. Yeah, costs were changed a lot, timeline changed a lot, and unfortunately, that's just kind of the way it is. But again, I really appreciate Mike and Peggy and feel like they're experts, and we've worked with them before and have a great relationship. So I really appreciate that.
Real quick, can I just reiterate something?
Yes.
You know, Bill hit on a really good point, because I guess mainly for the community, I think it's really easy to latch onto the idea that, you know, you're spending $5 million, give or take, and that's a really large number, and just spending money equals bad. So, I mean, I think it's easy to latch onto that idea, but I think it's important to keep in mind the bigger picture, like Bill was talking about. You know, we can continue to kick the can down the road, as I think was done in the past, or we can fix the issue that's in front of us right now. You know, we have an overcrowding problem at Edgewood. If we're going to fix it now, we've got two options. We can do the option we're doing right now, which will cost $5 million and not increase anybody's taxes, or we can go build a new elementary, which would mean we're going to pass a bond issue and pass a double-digit operating levy. And as much as those out there that would say, you know, you're spending $5 million, that's a big deal, I think they need to keep in mind the alternative. And I think we're making a very good move here.
Thank you very much.
With our, the presentation, because I did spend time and watch the last December's presentation just so I can go back to the why and look for reasons to support this and check my view. The two options of build an elementary school or expand, do this project, I don't know if those are the true two issues. Naven in that report has 5 additional classrooms space. Now, we did move our Alt-K to Naven, so I'm guessing that will bring it down to 4. I could be wrong. But if it's about, you know, leadership is about making decisions in a time, it's the timing of the decision that matters. And I really believe that we are paying more. At this point in time, we're going to pay more and get less than if we wait until the economy cools, we pass our operational levy. I know those are different monies. I do know that. If we have some margin to wait, we have capacity in the district while it's tight. We do have some capacity for overflow if need be for the elementary buildings. That I don't believe it's a true 2 options. I'm one member, and I have a lot of life to live, and lessons to learn. So I'm cognizant of that. So thank you.
I guess I just want to make a comment. If there is another option, it's putting kids in trailers. And you can talk to any parent whose students have been put in trailers because classrooms have overflowed, and they are not happy about that.
Okay, I think we're ready for a roll call on this.
Mr. Clark?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
No.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Next item on the agenda, I would accept a motion to approve the resolution for the conversion of the bonds.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Smith,
Second.
second by Mr. Keck. Questions or comments on this? Other than I appreciate having this opportunity to do this. I appreciate the foresight back in March to put us in this position.
Yeah, that was what I was going to say. This is, from my point of view, this is just fulfilling the second step of the process. And thank you, Todd, for your diligence in researching this and guidance.
Yep. One of these days, you're going to have to give us a spreadsheet just kind of highlighting like the total amount that we have saved from refunding bonds, really, just like since I've been on the board. It's been incredibly significant, so thank you. If no other comments, and roll call, please.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Next, I would accept a motion to approve the treasurer CFO action items.
So moved.
Motion by Ms. Savage,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Anything you'd like to share?
Yes. Do I need to repeat, or did everybody hear that? Okay, good. Let's see. In our cash flow, you'll notice a large variance in our real estate taxes. That's really just due to timing of advances right now, so there's no real concern there. We should probably see numbers pretty close in September to where we were. We received $183,000 of casino tax revenue in August. We receive that twice a year, August and January. That was an increase of $19,000 compared to what we received last year, so that was good news. And we also received a $54,000 rebate from the Bureau of Workers' Compensation. Each September, we approve the amounts and rates from the county auditor. That's an estimate of real estate tax revenues based on our millage. So that's on there. And finally, we have a donation of $650 from the Shearer Banks Insurance Associates and Randy Morris.
Questions or comments for Todd?
Yes. One question. I'm sorry I didn't call you beforehand, but can you explain the schedule and the role of our vote and just that process for me to understand?
Which schedule?
The Schedule A and Schedule B for the auditor.
The amounts and rates.
Amounts and rates, I'm sorry.
Yeah, so it's really just an Ohio Revised Code requirement that each school has to do every year. So the county auditor sends us this schedule that lists out the millage in effect for the school in each particular year. And then based on the valuation at that time, it's an estimate of what the tax collections will be. They use that to, in essence, kind of the first step in creating the whole budget process for schools. So they use that to create a certificate of available resources. So that taxable revenue is in essence kind of what they use to create that line of you've got this much money, so you can't spend more than you have. So that's really kind of the first step in this. It'll be a year-long process of various other items that we do with the county auditor.
Is this the triannual reevaluation? Is that taken into consideration in preparing this document?
The valuations used in this document would take that into account.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions or comments? All right, roll call, please.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. And finally, I would accept a motion to approve the superintendent items.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck,
Second.
second by Mr. Smith. Diane, anything?
Just a couple of things I'd like to comment on. First, want to recognize Jeff Marshall, who has been in the school district for 37 years. He is retiring at the end of the year and has turned in his letter. So he's been a PE teacher at Edgewood, Mill Valley, Creekview, coached football, wrestling, and softball over the years. So just want to congratulate him on his retirement and wish him well. You'll also see, and I gave you a little update with the school psychologist schedule. That's been a work in progress. Really, we were trying to get Lynette on board to kind of pan that out. School psychs are very difficult. We had one opening this year and 0 applicants. We had to cold call people from around Central Ohio in order to even get someone in. So making some adjustments, we're able to keep people in Marysville and not lose them to another school district. So it's a really good move, and they were very pleased and took part in that conversation. Volunteers, we also have a church agreement that's just an extension. Already things have gone really well, it's just extending that current agreement. Those are the big items in my section.
Questions or comments for Diane?
I do have one question about the psychologist. I understand that they're not a part of the teacher's salary or the teacher's schedule. They're considered as admin. There were some comps provided, and some districts have them on the teacher's schedule. Can you explain that? How does one make those decisions? And the ultimate, that person's career, how does that impact and retention?
I would say I'm not sure there's a right answer, and I think that's the response I gave you, that it's absolutely better to do it one way or the other way. School psychs obviously have a longer work year than teachers, and also are oftentimes working at nights and have more flexible hours, so it kind of makes sense to me that they're considered an admin. And that's one thing we did look at when we were working with them to develop that schedule, is if they would have stayed or been in the teaching units or been on the teacher's salary, that would be the better way to say it, where they would have landed. And really, like, one thing would be, like, you make more money more quickly on the psych schedule than you would on the teacher schedule. So there are nuances between the two. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, if I can, the negotiated agreement with the teachers, my experience in working with that on the teacher side of things is that you try to have issues that are consistent with everybody that you are representing in negotiations. And I know years ago there were questions about including bus drivers or cooks and custodians and so forth. But the work is so much different, the hours are different, that it didn't make sense for the teachers to include people that were not closely tied to the same schedule and the same kinds of activities. And I don't know what our teachers association, teacher union would say on this particular issue. But I tend to agree with what Diane said, is that their work schedule and their work conditions are such a difference that it would make negotiations and that whole process considerably more difficult from my experience.
I also want to note, we did ask the question about the impact of the 5-year forecast. This is very minimal impact. And it fits our strategic plan of making sure our staff are taken care of, and retention. And retention, in my opinion, is cost savings in the long run. And
Right.
And so,
Right.
thank you.
Yep. Okay. I noticed we have one early graduate on there, so I just wanted to congratulate that student. And when you mentioned the volunteers, this is the beginning of the school year, so you notice that was 4 pages of volunteers. So for all of you volunteers out there, we couldn't do it without you. Thank you for sharing your time with us and our students. So we really appreciate that. No other questions or comments. I'll take the roll call, please.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes?
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Ms. Devine?
Yes, motion carries. Comments and questions from board members. I'm going to go to my left. So Mr. Ferguson, you're up first.
I'm going to keep it short and sweet. The building reports, I love the format. I did notice that, and it gives me some of those top line items, the celebrations, and how we are making progress with the strategic plan. So I just want to say thank you. And to the 70 dads that have participated in the DOGS program, thank you for stepping up and being those positive role models.
Sure. Thank you. Ms. Savage.
At the risk of being a little bit repetitive, I want to thank Mill Valley for being here and giving the presentation. Really appreciate that. I was very happy to hear the positive results from the DOGS group. I'm super excited about that. And I love the fact that they're looking for not only staff feedback, but student feedback. I think that feedback helps create that, Deming circle of plan, do, check, action to see if what we're doing is working.
Mr. Keck.
I just got one comment. I thought that presentation from Mrs. Jones was awesome. And not only just the slides set up, but what they're planning to do looks very nice. And I'll leave the rest of my time to Mr. Smith.
Sorry, he's already at his max tonight, so no. Mr. Smith.
Yeah, I apologize for running on too long, but I'll share that I also like the new format. As Jermaine mentioned, I think it's really great. It's nice to see kids having first opportunities. Bunsold here in this building had their first pep rally of the year, and that's the first pep rally any of those students have ever had. And so I also saw some video from the high school pep rally and some races and so forth that they had there. It's nice to see kids having fun at the start of the school year, because I know they're also working hard in the classroom. And I really appreciate the people that we recognized at the beginning of our meetings, Donna and Jane and all the staff that were involved in that one situation. And I'm glad that we were able to recognize the successes rather than the tragedy.
Well said. Mr. Johnson, any comments?
Nope, nothing to add.
Hey, nope, okay. Just a couple things. Ditto everybody, congratulating Jane and Donna. We'll look forward to celebrating with them next week. Also, I know that we didn't make any comment about it, but I think one of the things on your sections, Todd, was adding another student activity, the Science National Honor Society. And that made me think about our strategic plan and just this real focus of tracking students to make sure that they have something to be involved in and be a part of. And so I just think that's so important. And I'm excited, I think about all of our fall sports and just all these extracurriculars and the fact that we are really being intentional to make sure that all of our students have some kind of an opportunity to be a part of a team. So really appreciate that. And for the building notes, I like the format, but I also like the fact that it was all in one document instead of separate links for each building. So I meant to say something I don't know if that was Donna's work or not, but probably. So with that, I would accept a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Motion by Mr. Keck.
Second.
Second by Mr. Smith. Roll call, please.
Mr. Keck?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Mr. Ferguson?
Yes.
Ms. Savage?
Yes.
Mr. Vine?
Yes, motion carries. We're adjourned at 8:16. Thank you.